What makes most women start a business? Is it passion, money, or freedom? Welcome to the Female Founders, the podcast that takes you behind the scene with women who are founders and CEOs to help you start and scale a successful business of your own. I am your host, Nagilia de Ravin. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Female Founders. Today I am joined by Jennifer Walton. She is the founder of Sky Nile Consulting and co-founder of Ground and Grind, a co-working and social space. Jennifer is a marketing expert, community builder, and proud mom who enjoys bringing people together. Good morning, Jennifer. Thank you so much for giving me this chance to have this conversation with you and to learn more about Sky. I just call it Sky because I like the way you say the name.
Yes, thank you. It's a Sky Nile Consulting, and there's a really fun backstory to how I named my company.
I look forward to hearing that, but can you tell us a little bit about your journey and what inspired you to start the company?
You know what? I have had a very interesting career journey, one that would say I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. I actually worked in corporate America when I graduated from business school. And that was always my dream, was to be, I don't know, like a corporate baddie, I guess. I would always see, when I was a little girl, my dad would take me to work with him and I would see women in business suits with really nice perfume. And that was always my dream. But you know what? I was working at a big Fortune 100 company right when the pandemic started. And I think that all of us started to recognize that we were being called in a different direction. And so I left the big private sector entity that I was working for to actually work in the public sector. So I began working for our regional transit authorities. So I made a shift from big Fortune 100 insurance and financial services company, where I was a marketing executive, to leading marketing for our public transit agency. And honestly, it just didn't really work out. And I thought to myself, like, am I making a mistake? What did I do?
Yeah.
And I kind of had a moment where I just realized that what I was looking for, it started off being like, I want to make an impact. I want to do work in the community. What I was looking for was really only could be provided by my own business. So it's like I have to be my own boss in order to have
Boss,
the
yeah.
impact and the flexibility that I was looking for. So I have two young girls. Right now they are 9 and 7. But at the time that I really began this process, which was 3 years ago, they were 6 and 3, or yeah,
Yeah.
6 and 4. So I wanted to be able to do more with them. And I wanted to see if I had what it took to start my own business. And I was thinking to myself one day, I had kind of like a major moment, a turning point at my last employer. And I said, I can do this. And I started my business literally within 2 weeks. I put my 2 week notice in and I was off to the races as a full-time entrepreneur.
Just like that.
Just like that. And certainly, I will say that I can thank a number of mentors that I had been speaking to along the way who knew that my journey was starting to get a little rocky. And so, my very first contract was a mentor that said, hey, they're looking for a fractional role. Would you be interested in being their interim VP of PR and communications? And I said, why not? And that was supposed to be a very short contract, but it gave me the confidence to step
Yeah.
out while I still got myself together in terms of, finances and what I needed to do. But that ended up lasting a year. And I started taking on other clients. And I realized that I could do it. It was
Yeah.
terrifying. And let's be clear, I think it's terrifying every day for
Yes.
entrepreneurs and small business owners, but we still have to do it.
Yeah, and I think that's what's make it fun, right? We are learning something new, and we're not learning it to grow somebody else's company. We're doing it for ourselves. So we are growing professionally and personally when we are entrepreneurs.
When I tell other people about just what it takes, because people will say like, "Oh, it couldn't be me," or "I really, I'm proud of you, but I could never do that." And again, I never saw myself running a marketing strategy and branding agency, and that's what Sky Nile Consulting does. But I tell people all the time, I was giving 40, 50, 60 hours of my week to
Yeah.
someone else. I can give that
Imagine.
to myself, right? And I can make it look like whatever I want it to look like. And I love that because my daughters are doing amazing things. And if I have to go to a school event at 10 o'clock in the morning, I can do that. And those are the things that mattered the most to me.
And I agree with that. And that's the same situation for me too. But you said there's a backstory for the name of the company. Can you
Yeah.
tell us about that?
So my name of the name of my company is Sky Nile Consulting. And it's kind of funny it's very easy for me to hear that and think that, but people get confused all the time. And my children's names are Sabella Nile and Skyla Niece. And so it is a combination of their names. And it does speak to the fact that the sky is truly the limit. And then I think of the powerful properties of water. And our daughter is named after the Nile River because, and this is just a funny story, but my husband and I were vacationing in Egypt 10 years ago. And when we got back from an amazing trip, I mean, I loved traveling through the country and I hope to go back to the continent here soon. But I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not feeling that well. I hope everything's okay. And come to find out, I was pregnant. And so, in an effort to pay respect and homage to that journey, we gave her the middle name of Nile. And so,
No.
I love that as being a part of my story and my legacy because we just recently moved into a brick and mortar location, which is where I am. And we had a big ribbon cutting ceremony. And my daughters actually spoke at that ceremony right after one of our
Hmm.
elected officials. So to have a CEO of our local chamber, one of our city council members, and then my children speak to the importance of opening a physical space for my business, it's so full circle. They are absolutely the future of this business.
I can see it. And then I think that you putting the names behind it, it's kind of for them like, okay, I will need to work on this, be part of this. And
Absolutely.
I think also you creating the example too, because mommy left it all and be there for me, but still be able to do something more than just being a mom.
And I bring them along with me because I think exposure is the key to their
Yeah.
future, right? So, it's exposing them to different things. It's giving them the understanding of what it takes. And they actually do know the story. They were there with me when I was in the big corporate building, when I was working in public transit. And what's really interesting, I think, is that for them, they get an understanding of why mommy's busy and what mommy is doing, and they
Yeah.
can appreciate it. But I think even beyond that, when I think about what handing them something looks like and what it means, is that they have a special understanding of what it takes to build community, what it takes to build a business. And again, it allows me to be more than just a mom. It allows me to
No.
be a leader. It allows me to um, also just show them and be the proof that you got this, kids. You can design whatever you want to design. And I will say that a long time ago, a mentor of mine in corporate America once was talking to me about authenticity. And she said, I'm all about authenticity. I think everyone should bring a authentic version of themselves to corporate, right? But she said,
Yeah.
until your name is on the outside of the building, you have to understand and abide by the culture of this
Ooh.
company. And that stuck with me. And I thought to myself, like, I love that, I get that, and I can mentor others with that same advice. But I remember thinking to myself, like, I want my name on a building so that
Yeah.
I can create a culture that works the best for me and those who work with me. And so having a business, my husband's an entrepreneur too. Both of us have our names on our buildings, and that's the culture that we're creating.
And I love it. Well, we've been talking about Sky now, but we haven't really explained what is it about.
Yes, yes. So Sky Nile Consulting is a full service marketing strategy and branding firm. And so what that looks like is, I'm coming to understand that people really don't know what marketing is, right? Because
Right.
it's something that either is done to you or you almost just see the output of it, right? So people are familiar with billboards or radio commercials or TV commercials. Like the Super Bowl is not only a big athletic event, but for marketers, it's truly our Super Bowl. You see the best commercials And, I spent a lot of time breaking those commercials down. But ultimately, what I like to say is I help businesses and organizations. I do a lot of work with government and municipalities. So I even help the city, the county, and our state um, take their organizational or business goals and put it into a strategy that tells the market or tells the public. And so if your goal is to, grow an organization through a new product or service, I can help build that strategy with you,
Oh,
build the marketing tactics and the marketing strategy surrounding that and the branding. So what does it look like? How does it feel? How does it sound? And put that into the marketplace. And so it's more than just running social media ads. It's,
yeah.
is social media the right channel for our audiences? Do we know our audience and what are their motivations? What are their needs? What are their pain points? And how does this organization uniquely deliver and solve for those needs and solve those pain points? I help organizations figure that out. And once we figure that out, it's like, okay, great. Now let's go build the commercials. Now let's go build the print
Yeah.
ads or the billboards and put it into the wild. And I can help you optimize once we do that. So that's ultimately what our agency does. And we have a particular niche, I would say, around organizations that are looking to have impact. We say that we create movements with movement, right? So
Right.
if you're an organ, so from that purpose, we work with a lot of nonprofits as well because they're trying to make an impact. They're not just selling widgets, but certainly I've done that before too and can do that. But I really like doing marketing that helps move communities forward.
And when you say that, and I heard a lot of time I speak with small business owners or entrepreneurs who was just starting a business, and a lot of time the first thing I will hear from them is that, okay, I need to go create a social media page, and I'm like,
Yeah.
do you really need it?
Yeah, I deal with that a lot. And I think that's what also makes my agency a little bit unique, right? So sometimes people will come to us and they'll say, I have a specific tactic that I want. I want social media, I want radio ads. And my goal is to be as transparent and honest and helpful as possible. And so I will say, well, hold up. Do your target audiences listen to the radio? Are they on social media? So I once had a client that served seniors. So those, age 60 and up. And they said, we want to start a TikTok. And I was like, I don't think that audience is on TikTok. And ultimately, who you're trying to reach is actually the caregivers of those who are seniors. And
Oh,
they don't want you on TikTok having fun either because they want to know that when their loved ones are in your care and when those loved ones are coming to you, that you're not being funny and that you're not dancing around. They want to see that you're serious. And so I was able to have that strategic conversation with a client that said, let's talk about who you're trying to reach and where they actually are before jumping straight to tactics.
and I like that. Let's start a TikTok. I remember the first time.
You know,
I remember with the first time my staff tell me you need a TikTok. I'm like, what the heck is TikTok?
right.
I don't know what TikTok is.
And honestly, and that's why too, I hire people who understand all the different landscapes, right? I think that's important for entrepreneurs. As entrepreneurs, we're used to wearing all the hats. We have to do our accounting, we have to do a lot of our legal work, just because that's the nature of the business. When you're first starting out, you may not have a ton of capital that will allow you to hire for those roles. But I would advise that if that is not your zone of genius, get the expert, figure it out, barter services. I will do this for you if you do this for me, because that is where a lot of small businesses kind of make missteps. And so in my
Yes.
case, I don't know TikTok very well either. I am much more of a writer. I love writing. That's my zone of genius, as well as being a
Yes.
strategist, and that's my creative outlet. And so when it comes to social media, you'll find me on Threads, because Twitter used to be my thing. But what I also tell clients is, so even though I don't know all the latest trends, I hire the people who do, and they can deliver, strong marketing in those channels. But I do have an overarching kind of lens on what's happening in the marketplace. And I've been advising a lot of clients to be very careful how they use social media, because what we're finding is that it's pay to play. And so organic is very hard in building up your organic reach. And where I typically like to work with clients is starting with all of the properties that you own, your website, your email list. You have to have a way to exist without some of these channels that you don't.
Yes. And I say that, it's funny you say that because I always say that to people. I'm like, you cannot rely just on social media for your business. You start a company, oh, I'm going to create a Facebook page, a LinkedIn page, a TikTok page, a Twitter page. You have all the pages. Congratulations, great. But are they going to work for you? Are they going to bring you clients? Maybe, maybe not.
And those are the things that we also help people understand is along the customer journey, where are people looking for you? Where are they expecting to find you? And, again, if you don't have the properties that you own, you're at the risk and the, I guess, even the up and down nature of the people who own those platforms. And so if Mark Zuckerberg is like, I'm going to turn Facebook off for a day, what are you going to do? Right. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of companies are starting to realize that they have to have a much more diverse marketing mix. And, to be quite honest, I'm really hoping that we can kind of get back to a little bit more traditional media
Mm-hmm.
and building community. I tell people, you can build community online for sure, but being able to move offline and still have a slew of customers that will buy from you, I think is going to be important. You just never know. And there's a lot going on in the environment today of business that is unpredictable. So we kind of have to protect ourselves from that.
And it's kind of what you just said is someone else said that to me about 3 days ago, actually.
Mhm.
And she said to me, you have to have a location. You need your community to know what you are doing. You cannot just be online. What happened if the internet went offline for a week? What are you going to do?
And that sounds funny to people, like, what? That will never happen. And it's not even that, it doesn't have to be as extreme, even as a week. I mean, I think a lot of people would be at risk if the internet went down for a day. Amazon Web Services, which is kind of like the back end, the cloud based back end for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of vendor services like point of sale things. I think it did go down for a day. And so some businesses can't afford to lose even $1,000 in expected revenue in a single day. And so something that I recently came to better understand, I recently graduated from the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses Program, which I think is phenomenal for entrepreneurs. We had to build risk mitigation plans. And I didn't think about stuff like that. I mean, I don't deal in supply chain products. Like, so I don't deal in having to get things from, other countries or imports and exports. I'm a service-based business, but these things still do affect my clients. But I'll never forget when that big old barge boat got stuck in one of the
Yeah.
canals and people's things were on that boat. And not only was it that, but other boats couldn't pass. And that threw our supply chain into a tizzy. Things from like toilet paper all the way to fruits and vegetables, right? And
Yeah.
so, even though I own a service based business, I have to look at those things, whether they affect my clients or understanding that if my clients aren't able to sell their goods and services, then they can't pay me either. And so, these things are all interconnected. And it's tough being an entrepreneur and having to keep a close pulse on all these different things, but at the same time, somebody's got to do it.
Do it.
And what I'm also learning is that it's not always going to be perfect. And at some point, I may stumble and fail. And that in itself is a lesson that I can take away and use, to further my business or pivot. So I think, being an entrepreneur allows that flexibility. When I worked in corporate, it felt so safe. It just felt so intrinsically safe. But then I would watch people get laid off. And I would think to myself, wow, this is not as stable or as safe as I thought it was. And so I always tell people that, even if entrepreneurship is not for you, don't never say never. I think that's what
Yes, never say
never
never.
say never.
Because you know what? A lot of people are looking for that safe paycheck, right? Because we
Absolutely.
want that paycheck because they pay the bills. Don't get me wrong. I was there at one
Yeah, no,
point.
absolutely.
And it feels good. You get the paycheck and you pay the bills and your bank says 0.00. And I
Yeah.
love these numbers. Oh, I got lucky sometime when it says 0.10 cents. So
You and honestly, like this, when you start to do new things and do different things, you actually begin to understand more about the things you used to do, right? And so when you have to figure out health insurance for yourself because it's no longer tied to your employer, you start to question, well, why is it that health insurance is tied to my employment status, right? And do all countries work this way? And so you kind of start to do your research and you learn that
yeah,
maybe this isn't the best way. And so there are times where your experiences can actually lend itself to advocacy because, again, things aren't always as stable and as safe as they seem they are.
yeah,
And you learn this when you're forced into a place of discomfort and having to figure it out for yourself. And so I think more people, even if it's not something that you do long term, because let me be clear, I love my business. I love my flexibility, but I'm always going to do what's in the best interest for me and my family. And so, in the event that something happens and my business starts to falter, I keep all avenues open. But I
yes.
think that's the importance of building community and building, real genuine connections. I don't use the word network. This is my community. And so I know that if my business were struggling, I can reach out to others and, ask for guidance or really just figure it out. Or I could go back to corporate. I don't close any doors and I continue to nurture relationships from my past career, but I just want more people to be more open to the variety that life and your career has to offer.
You never know. Give it a shot. It might work, it might not work. And all the time I tell people, don't just get, some of us, like me and you, we get up and go. But not everyone have that opportunity, right? Because some of us have good husbands. They
Right.
can afford to take care of things on their own for a little bit as we go into a different path of life to do
Right.
certain
Yeah.
things, while others might not have that chance. And
Yeah.
if you don't, what you can do is stay, keep your corporate job
Yeah.
and start something part-time once in a while. I don't know, just to start it out to see if you like it or not, if it's gonna work for you or not.
Agreed. I think that the variety of experiences I think I think we're all the sum of all of our different experiences. And so my goal tends to be just to have well a well-versed variety of things, right? And so my husband and I talk all the time because he's been an entrepreneur pretty much his entire career. He's a lawyer. And, he worked for a law firm, a small law firm for a couple of years, and he realized it wasn't going to be um, something that made him feel fulfilled. And he didn't have the autonomy and the agency that he wanted. He started his own law firm, and it's now been, I guess, I don't know, 12, 13 years. And he's never had to work for anyone else. But I joke with him. I used to be a server when I was in high school and in early college years. And that really taught me how to deal with difficult people, how to communicate, how to sell, and how to work in high stress, high pressure environments. And also being a mom, it taught me how to carry a lot of things in my hands, right?
Yes.
But that's something that he's like, he can't do that, right? Something as small as like carrying multiple dishes in his hands. He's like, well, I was never a server. I'm like, you know what? But that's why certain things come easy to me. I've had a variety of different experiences that have shown me that, push come to shove, I can do those things.
The same.
Um, but it takes being exposed to it. It takes just kind of stepping out sometimes. And, again, for my kids, I don't know what they may want to do with their future, but I'm trying to give them as much exposure as possible. And the funniest thing is that they themselves have actually launched little businesses, and I can't be more proud of them.
This is so cool.
Yeah, I mean, hey, everybody got to look out for Sizzle Brands. They sell merch, lotions, and bags. And then Clay and Slay, which is my youngest daughter, she sells tote bags that are
Ooh.
branded, but also she sells clay art pieces. And this was something that she started because both of them, their school had a center for entrepreneurship and just instilled in them the opportunity to create businesses if they wanted to.
I love that. But you also co-founded another company,
Yeah,
GRND.
So, Ground and Grind, we call it Grind for short,
Brandon?
is a company that actually is located below me. And it is a co working social club for our community. And it's membership based, but we have a lot of events. We do event rentals for non members as well. But our idea is to create an additional third space for like minded community members to come and either grind and get a lot of work done or ground and be in community with one another. And so when our nervous systems tend to kind of like get out of whack and get dysregulated, we don't really have many places to turn
Yeah.
to just relax and read a book. We've got a library, it's a very nice um calming place where people can come, work, listen to music, meet other people that are like them, and just really kind of have that balance in life. There's just not a lot of place. And coming out of the pandemic, there certainly weren't many after that. And I think that
Yeah.
Ground and Grind, which is probably we're going in our third year, is the epitome of what it looks like to build community. And I'm very proud of that business as well.
I like the concept behind it. But you also involve in several community organizations. Why is giving back and supporting women of color so important to you?
I can say I'm very excited to say, I chair the board for Zora's House, and we are a powerhouse, dynamic space for women of color to be liberated, to dream, to create. And that has been a great gift to me as an entrepreneur, but also to give it to the community. I'm also the vice chair of the board for the Neighborhood Design Center. I recently joined the board for Girls Health Period, which is looking to fight period poverty. And there are a couple other board assignments that are on the horizon that I can't quite speak about just yet. But I think that it's just in my DNA. When I talk about building community, that is not just in my personal life, not just for the benefit of my business and my career, my professional life, but it is my rent that I pay to just exist in on this planet, is to be in service to others. And even within my business, we call ourselves servant creators. You hear about or servant creatives. You hear about servant leaders. We're servant
Yeah.
creatives. We're building and designing and creating for purposes bigger than ourselves. I mean, ultimately, that's just a big part of, I think, how we will navigate the future. I think, they say, what is it? There is an old African saying that if you want to go if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And like, we live that. We live it.
But what advice would you give to women who want to start their own business or step into leadership?
My thing is, be the type of leader that people would voluntarily get behind to follow, right? And build services that make this world better. And so I think sometimes people want to build a business, they have an idea and they start with like, this is my idea, I'm going to go build that. But does your community, do your people need that thing? And then if so, how can you uniquely provide it? So that's my advice, is to build with the community that you wish to serve in mind, build it with them, and then, nurture relationships that will help you go further. And when those people step up to help you, make sure that you're returning that love and that favor.
I love that. We turn it right back to them.
Absolutely.
And how can anyone reach out to you or the company?
Yeah, so my company is Sky Nile Consulting. You can find us on all social media platforms at Sky, like the sky, Nile, like the river, consulting. But if you want to find me personally, I'm also available on social media at JG Runs the City. That's pretty simple. JG Runs the City.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for having this conversation with me and for allowing me to learn more about Sky now. I just like to call it Sky. I don't know why.
My youngest daughter would love to hear that.
And I think what you're doing is awesome, especially with your children. You are allowing them to learn from you and such a young age. And we need that as mothers. We should be passing that more often. But unfortunately, not every woman has the chance, I guess, the capacity or the time to even do that. But when I see it happening, it's just so beautiful.
And I bring my children's friends along too, right? And so again,
Yeah.
I believe in community. So whereas when my daughter started her first business, Sizzle, she started with a classmate of hers. I talked to her mom and said, "Hey, I got it. We can partner on it, but I'm going to help these kids along in in this way because it's something that I understand and it's something unique to me. So I bring my kids' friends along. Again, it's all about community. I'm not leaving any child behind. I'm not leaving anyone behind if I can help.
You're just gonna take everyone with you. Let's go. Let's do it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You are amazing. Thank you for what you are doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot. And I appreciate the Rising Entrepreneur Award. This is just, for me, it's just the beginning, but I don't take a single ounce of recognition for granted. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to Female Founders Podcast. That's it for this week's episode. Be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast app or connect with us on womel.com so that you don't miss our next episode. See you next time. Bye for now.